Moments that split a room in two, before and after. This was one of them. The 43rd floor of the Harlow Group headquarters had seen its share of high-stakes moments. Hostile takeovers negotiated over cold coffee, careers ended with a single sentence, deals worth hundreds of millions signed without a tremor of hesitation. The people who moved through these hallways were not easily rattled. They had trained themselves not to be. But on a Tuesday morning in early November, a 7-year-old girl said 4 words that stopped every single one of them cold. "I'll pay you to be my mom." She said it clearly. No stutter, no second thought. She looked straight up at the woman standing in front of her, a woman whose name appeared on the cover of Forbes, whose photograph hung in the lobby downstairs, whose reputation for composure under pressure was practically institutional, and she said it like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. Because to her, it was. The hallway did not erupt into noise. It did the opposite. It went so quiet that the hum of the ventilation system became audible, that the faint sound of traffic 43 floors below drifted up through the glass like something from another life. Every head turned. Every breath held. The woman, Vivian Carter, CEO of the Harlow Group, age 38, known for saying exactly what needed to be said and nothing more, stood perfectly still. Her expression did not shift into something readable. It shifted into something worse, the look of a person who has spent years building a wall and just felt something hit the other side of it. No one in that hallway knew what the little girl had in her coat pocket. No one knew about the tin box. No one knew how long she had been saving. They only knew that whatever had just happened, it was not nothing. And they were right. If this kind of story stays with you, the quiet ones, the ones about ordinary people doing extraordinary things for love, you might want to stick around. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Now let's go back to the beginning. Vivian Carter had not always been the kind of woman people went quiet around. There had been a version of her, younger, softer, still capable of being surprised by her own feelings, who laughed easily and left the radio on while she cooked, and believed, with the kind of confidence that only exists before life tests it, that things would generally work out. That version was not gone, exactly. It had simply been placed somewhere out of reach, like a photograph turned face down in a drawer. She built the Harlow Group from a mid-size consulting firm into one of the most respected organizational strategy companies on the East Coast. She had done it through 15-hour days, an almost eerie ability to read a room, and a refusal to let sentiment interfere with sound judgment. People who worked for her respected her completely and understood her barely at all. She was fair. She was consistent. She did not raise her voice, and she did not need to. What very few people knew, what Vivian had made certain very few people knew, was the reason the nursery in her apartment had been converted into a home office 10 years ago. She had been pregnant at 28. The baby did not survive. The man she loved did not stay. There was no dramatic falling apart, no visible collapse. Vivian simply went back to work, and then worked more, and rearranged the furniture in the room that was supposed to be something else, and kept moving forward until forward became the only direction she remembered how to go. She had built no wall in one deliberate moment. She had laid it brick by brick over years, telling herself each one was just good sense, that detachment was professionalism, that self-sufficiency was strength. By 38, the wall looked so much like a personality that even she had trouble seeing where one ended and the other began. Marcus Webb was not a man who asked for help. He was 40 years old, broad-shouldered, with the kind of hands that showed work, calloused, steady, never idle. He had been a facilities maintenance technician at the Harlow Group building for 6 years. He showed up early, stayed late, fixed what needed fixing, and did not get involved in the politics of the floors above him. His wife, Dara, had left when their daughter was 3 years old. No warning that he had understood as a warning. One morning she was there, and the next she was not, and the note she left was brief in the way that suggested she had been composing it in her head for a long time. Marcus had not tried to find her. He had picked Lily up from the neighbor's apartment, buckled her into her car seat, driven to the park, and sat on a bench while she played on the swings for 45 minutes. He did not cry at the park. What he did instead was work. He learned to braid hair well enough that Lily never went to school looking uncared for. He sat with her at the kitchen table every night until her homework was done, even on the evenings when his eyes were barely open. He was, by every measure he knew how to apply, a good father. The thought that it might not be enough, that love alone, however relentless, might still leave a gap, was one he kept pushing to the back of his mind, where it waited with considerable patience. Lily Webb was 7 years old and had learned very early that the world rewarded quietness in children. She was small for her age, with her father's eyes and a habit of watching adults carefully before she spoke to them, assessing, in the wordless way of children who have spent time in uncertain spaces, whether this was someone safe. She did well in school. She did not cause trouble. She asked for very little. But in the bottom drawer of the small white dresser in her bedroom, pushed behind a folded sweater she had outgrown, there was a tin box with a painted flower on the lid. Inside it, 2 $20 bills, a handful of ones, and a collection of quarters, dimes, and pennies that she had accumulated over the better part of 2 years. Allowance money, birthday money, a $5 bill she had found on the sidewalk outside the grocery store and waited 3 whole minutes beside before deciding no one was coming back for it. $42.63. She did not know exactly how much a mother cost, but she knew that most things worth having cost money. And she had decided, in the serious and unironic way of a child who has thought about something for a very long time, that she was going to be ready. The morning it happened had started like any other. Marcus's phone buzzed at 6:14 with a text from Mrs. Patton, the retired schoolteacher 2 floors down who watched Lily on weekday mornings until the school bus came. Woke up with a fever. So sorry, Marcus. I'll make it up to you. He read it standing in the kitchen in his work uniform, coffee going cold on the counter, Lily still asleep in the next room. He ran through his options in the time it took to set the phone down. His shift started at 7. There was a scheduled maintenance check on the elevator system in the East Wing. The building's chief engineer had flagged pressure irregularities in the hydraulic system, and if it wasn't addressed before the business floors opened, the whole bank of elevators would need to be shut down. There was no one else on his team certified to run the diagnostic. Calling out was not a real option. So he woke Lily gently, helped her get dressed, fixed her a piece of toast for the road, and told her what he told her every time circumstances required more of her than they should have. I need you to be my partner today, okay? Lily looked up at him and said, Okay, Daddy. She always said okay. He got her settled in the break room on the basement maintenance level with her backpack, a library book, and strict instructions not to move. The diagnostic took longer than expected. The pressure irregularity turned out to be a fault in the control panel sensor, and by the time Marcus had identified it and radioed it up the chain, the building's facilities manager had made the call to shut down the east elevator bank and reroute traffic to the west wing. This meant people moving, a lot of them, all at once, through corridors that were not designed for that volume of foot traffic. And it meant that at some point between 7:45 and 8, Lily, who had grown restless and gone looking for a bathroom and taken a wrong turn, found herself standing in the middle of a crowded 43rd floor hallway, surrounded by people in expensive coats who were all moving in different directions, and not one of them was her father. She did not cry. She stood very still and tried to find a face she recognized. Vivian had been directing her assistant, Thomas, toward the conference room when the elevator disruption reached her floor. It was an inconvenience, not a crisis, and she handled it the way she handled inconveniences. Efficiently, without commentary. She was moving back toward her office when the crowd shifted and she saw the child. The girl was standing completely still in the middle of moving foot traffic, the way a small stone sits in the middle of a current. She had a backpack on that was slightly too big for her frame, and she was holding the strap with both hands, eyes scanning the hallway with an expression that was working very hard not to become afraid. Then someone cut past her too quickly, and she stumbled, and her knee hit the floor. Vivian moved before she thought about it. She was beside the girl in a moment, one hand steadying her by the shoulder, the other brushing the dust from the knee of her leggings. She looked at the girl's face and asked quietly, "Are you hurt?" Lily looked at her. Children were not subtle. They looked at you the way animals did, directly, without the social filters that adults spent years constructing. Lily looked at Vivian the way you look at something you have been searching for without knowing you were searching. Something shifted in her small face. The expression that had been working very hard not to become afraid became something else entirely. "I'm okay," she said. And then before Vivian could stand back up, before the hallway could move on and this moment could dissolve into the rest of the morning the way all moments eventually did. "I'll pay you to be my mom." The hallway stopped. Vivian did not move. She was still at the child's eye level, close enough to see that the girl meant it, not as a joke, not as a game, not as the random output of an overstimulated child's imagination. She meant it the way you mean the truest things. Simply, completely, without apology. And something behind the wall Vivian had spent 10 years building made a sound she had not heard in a very long time. Marcus heard it from the end of the hallway. He had come up the moment he realized Lily wasn't in the break room. Backpack gone, book still on the table, the kind of absence that hits a parent like cold water. He arrived just in time to see his daughter looking up at Vivian Carter, saying the things she said. He heard every word. For a moment, he did not move. He stood at the edge of the crowd and felt three things at once, in rapid and disorderly succession. Shame, because this was his child making a spectacle in front of people who had the power to make his professional life very difficult. Grief, because he recognized in Lily's voice something he had been trying not to hear for a long time. And the particular gutting helplessness of a parent who understands in a single unguarded moment that they have been failing their child in a way they had not let themselves fully see. He crossed the hallway. People stepped aside. "Lily." His voice was calm. He had practiced calm. "Come here, baby." Lily turned to look at him. She did not look caught. She looked like she had simply said a true thing and was waiting to see what happened next. Marcus lifted her and settled her against his side. He looked at Vivian, who had straightened up and was watching him with an expression he could not fully read. Not pity, not amusement, but something quieter than either. "I'm sorry," he said. "She knows better than to wander off. I apologize for the disruption." "She didn't disrupt anything," Vivian said. He nodded once, tightly, and turned away. He didn't speak to Lily about it until they were back in the break room downstairs. He set her down on a chair and knelt in front of her, eye level, and looked at his daughter's face. "Why did you say that to her?" Lily considered the question. "Because she was nice to me," she said, "and she smelled like someone who stays." Marcus had no idea what that meant. He suspected it meant everything. He stood and turned away so she wouldn't see his face. He stood with his hands on the edge of the counter and breathed, slow and deliberate, the way he had taught himself to breathe when something hit harder than he was prepared for. He had told himself for 4 years that he was enough, that Lily needed stability, and he was giving her that, and it would be sufficient. He was standing in a basement break room listening to his daughter explain that a woman she had met 4 minutes ago smelled like someone who stays, and he understood, with the total, unwelcome clarity of a thing you can no longer choose not to know, that he had been wrong. Marcus spent the next week being very deliberate about not thinking about it. This was a skill he had developed over years, the ability to take something that threatened to occupy too much mental space and reduce it to a manageable size through sheer force of routine. He worked his shifts. He picked Lily up from school. He made dinner and checked homework, and read the same chapter of the same book 3 nights in a row because it was her favorite and she wasn't ready to move on yet. The building talked. The building always talked. Facility staff heard things, not because they eavesdropped, but because they were invisible to the people on the upper floors the way furniture was invisible, and people spoke freely around furniture. By Wednesday, Marcus had heard from 2 separate co-workers that the story of the little girl on 43 had made the rounds. By Friday, his supervisor had clapped him on the shoulder and said, with the well-meaning clumsiness of someone who thought they were being supportive, "Hey, kids say wild stuff, man. Nobody's holding that against you." Marcus had thanked him and gone back to work. Nobody holding it against him was not the same as nobody remembering it. And Marcus Webb had spent 6 years in this building being the man who did his job well and did not give people reasons to look at him twice. He was not angry at Lily. He was not capable of being angry at Lily, but he was tired in a way that went beyond the physical. A tiredness that settled somewhere behind his sternum and did not lift.
Vivian went back to work.
She was good at going back to work. She sat through 4 hours of meetings on Wednesday, approved a restructuring proposal on Thursday, and flew to Boston on Friday morning for a client presentation that went exactly as she had prepared it to go. On the flight back, somewhere over Connecticut, she found herself calculating how much $42.63 would mean to a 7-year-old who had been saving for 2 years. She put her laptop away and looked out the window for the rest of the flight. The problem was not that she couldn't stop thinking about the child. She had encountered children before without incident. The problem was more specific. She could not stop thinking about the expression on Lily's face in the moment before she spoke. Not the open, indiscriminate warmth that children sometimes directed at friendly strangers. Something more deliberate, more considered. Recognition, almost, as if something in the girl had identified something in her. It was Lily who made the next move. This should not have surprised anyone paying attention. Marcus, occupied with avoidance, had underestimated the degree to which his daughter had already decided how this was going to go. Lily was 7, but she had been thinking about this particular problem for 2 years, and she approached it with the focused patience of someone who had waited long enough. She knew which floor Vivian worked on. She had paid attention in the hallway. She knew the elevator banks, and she knew, from previous visits to the building, that the lobby security guard had a habit of being distracted on Tuesday afternoons. She did not tell her father her plan. Thomas, Vivian's assistant, was the one who appeared in the doorway of her office on a Tuesday afternoon with the carefully neutral expression of someone delivering information they were not sure how to categorize. "There's a little girl at the front desk. She says she has a meeting with you." Vivian looked up from her screen. "I don't have any—" "She was pretty insistent," Thomas said. "She has a tin box." Vivian was quiet for a moment. "Send her in." Lily walked into the office the way she walked into most spaces. Slowly, taking stock, making sure she understood the room before she committed to being in it. She was wearing her school clothes, her backpack straps cinched tight, and she was carrying the tin box with both hands, level, the way you carry something that matters. She stopped in front of Vivian's desk and looked at the woman on the other side of it. "Does your father know you're here?" Vivian asked. "No," Lily said without hesitation and without apology. "He's going to be worried." "I'll be fast," Lily said. She set the tin box on the edge of the desk with a small, definitive sound and opened the lid. Inside, 2 $20 bills folded carefully along their original creases. A handful of ones, quarters, dimes, nickels, pennies, arranged with the unconscious tidiness of a child who had handled them many times. A small slip of paper on top with numbers in a child's handwriting. Addition done and redone. The final total circled twice. $42.63. "I know it's not enough," Lily said. Her voice was steady. She had practiced the steadiness. "But I've been saving for a long time and I'm going to keep saving. I just wanted you to know I'm serious." "How long have you been saving?" Vivian asked. "Since I was 5, Lily said. "After my teacher said that if you want something bad enough, you have to work for it." "Your teacher was talking about something else," Vivian said quietly. "I know," Lily said, "but it still counts." Vivian stood up from her desk and pulled a chair around so she was sitting at the girl's level without making a performance of it. She looked at the tin box for a long moment. What she felt, looking at it, was not pity. She had expected pity and found something rawer and less comfortable. Something that recognized itself in the logic of a child who had decided the only way to get what she needed was to figure out how to pay for it herself. She knew that logic. She had been living by a version of it for most of her adult life. "What's your name?" she asked, though Thomas had told her. "Lily," the girl said. "Tell me about the box, Lily," Vivian said. "From the beginning." And Lily did. Marcus found out where Lily had gone when the lobby desk called the maintenance bay. He arrived to find his daughter sitting calmly on the bench by the front door, tin box in her lap, looking entirely untroubled. "I went to talk to her," Lily said. "I know. She listened to the whole thing." "Lily. She didn't say no." Marcus crouched down so their eyes were level. His voice, when he found it, was careful and low. "What you did today was not okay. You left without telling anyone. You went somewhere you're not allowed." Lily absorbed this seriously. "I'm sorry about that part." "Which part?" "The part where you didn't know where I was," she said. "Not the other part." Marcus looked at his daughter for a long moment. Then he stood, took her hand, and walked her to the parking lot without another word. Over the following 2 weeks, things developed in ways Marcus had not anticipated. Vivian arranged, through the building's HR department, for Lily to have a slot in the employee child care center on days when Marcus's shift ran long, framed quietly as an underutilized staff benefit. Marcus received the paperwork on a Thursday. He sat with it for 4 days before he signed it, and even then the transaction felt like a stone in his chest. Not because it wasn't practical, because accepting it meant admitting the arrangement he had been holding together with discipline and sheer will was more fragile than he had allowed himself to believe. He did not thank her directly. He did not know how to do that without it becoming something larger than he was ready for. Then the building talked. Someone photographed Vivian and Lily walking through the lobby together, Lily with her backpack, Vivian carrying nothing, the two of them mid-conversation, and posted it online with a caption that asked more than it stated. Vivian's communications director called on a Friday afternoon. "It's nothing yet, but it could become something." "Handle the board," Vivian said. "I'll handle the rest." She hung up and sat in the quiet of her office. She understood the calculation her communications director was making. She did not care about it the way she once would have. What she cared about, and could not stop caring about, was harder to manage than board optics. Every conversation with Lily was a door opening onto a room she had sealed. And what frightened her most was not the room itself. It was how much she wanted to walk into it. It happened on a Thursday night in December. Marcus had been running on empty for longer than he would admit to anyone, including himself. He had picked up a third-shift rotation in November to cover a coworker's medical leave. 5 days a week of back-to-back blocks with barely enough space between them for pickup, dinner, and homework. He had done it before. He told himself this was no different. His body disagreed. He collapsed in the parking garage at the end of his second shift. Not dramatically, not the way it happened in movies, but quietly, the way exhaustion finally wins. His vision narrowed, his knees gave, and he sat down hard against a concrete pillar before he fully understood what was happening. One of the night crew found him 11 minutes later and called an ambulance. He was conscious by the time they reached the hospital. Dehydration, dangerously elevated blood pressure, the kind of physical shutdown that happens when a body has been treated like a machine for too long by a man who could not afford to believe he was anything less than one. The attending physician used the word crisis. Marcus used the word fine repeatedly until the physician stopped responding to it. At the apartment, Lily had been waiting since 6 o'clock. Mrs. Patton had brought her home at 5:30 as usual and stayed as the minutes passed. When 6:30 became 7 and Marcus's phone went to voicemail a 4th time, she tried the maintenance bay. She tried 2 neighbors. At 7:15, her own phone rang. Her daughter calling from a hospital 3 states away where Mrs. Patton's husband had been admitted that morning. She stood in the hallway outside Marcus's apartment, looked at Lily through the open door, and made the calculation of a woman being pulled in 2 impossible directions at once. "Is there anyone I can call for you, sweetheart?" Lily went to her backpack, unzipped the front pocket, and produced a folded piece of paper with a phone number written on it in her own careful handwriting. She had written it down 2 weeks ago, in the quiet of Vivian's office, after Lily had finished telling her about the box. "Just in case," Vivian had said when she gave it. Lily had known it was not just in case. Mrs. Patton called the number and then, only once she heard Vivian say, "I'm leaving right now," and confirmed she was on her way, did she step out to deal with her own emergency, leaving the door unlocked and the hallway light on. Vivian arrived 40 minutes later. She had been at a dinner, the kind that required a car service and a specific dress. She left 12 minutes after Lily called, said something brief to the host that was not entirely accurate, and spent the ride over staring at her phone without looking at anything on it. The apartment building was a 4-story walk-up in a quiet block in Glendale. Vivian stepped inside. Lily was sitting on the couch in the living room, still in her school clothes, the tin box in her lap. The apartment was small and very clean. Everything in its place. The walls decorated with Lily's school drawings taped up with the kind of care that made them look intentional. The home of a man who had given everything to make a small space feel like enough. Lily looked at Vivian when she came in. She did not ask where her father was. She did not ask if everything was okay. She had learned very young not to ask questions when the answer might be something she wasn't ready to hold. She asked only one thing. "Are you going to stay?" Vivian looked at this child, 7 years old, sitting alone in a quiet apartment, holding a tin box full of saved-up change like it was the only anchor she had, and felt something give way that would not be rebuilt. She took off her coat. She sat down on the couch beside Lily. "Yes," she said. "I'm staying." Marcus came home from the hospital on Saturday morning. Vivian had slept on the couch. She was a woman who slept in 1,200 thread-count sheets in an apartment with blackout curtains, and the second-hand sectional in Marcus Webb's living room listed slightly to the left. She had slept on it anyway because Lily had fallen asleep with her head against Vivian's arm sometime around 10, and Vivian had not been willing to move. She was in the kitchen making coffee when she heard the key in the door. Marcus stopped in the doorway. He took in Vivian. He took in Lily, who had woken and come padding out in her socks. He took in his apartment, his small, orderly apartment, now containing someone who had not been in it before. Something moved across his face that was complicated enough that Vivian did not try to name it. "Daddy," Lily said, and crossed the room and pressed her face against his ribs. Marcus held her with both arms, eyes closed for a long moment. When he opened them, he looked at Vivian over the top of Lily's head. "Thank you," he said. It came out flat. Not ungrateful, the gratitude was there, but weighted with something that made the words difficult to carry. "Of course," she said. He nodded once. She understood she was being dismissed. She left. She rode the car service back to her apartment and stood under the shower for a long time. She had always been able to find the part of herself that processed difficult things by filing them in the correct category and moving on. That part was not available to her now. What was available was the memory of Lily's weight against her arm, the specific silence of a little girl who had stopped being afraid for a few hours because someone had stayed. Vivian sat on the edge of her bed and looked at the wall. She was afraid. The fear had a shape now, the shape of a child who trusted her, and the shape of the child she had lost 10 years ago, and the terrible possibility that she would look at Lily and always see both at once. She was not afraid of loving Lily. That, she understood with a clarity that surprised her, was already happening and could not be undone. She was afraid of what love required: presence, continuity, the willingness to be there on the ordinary days and the bad days and the days when nothing happened at all. Marcus, meanwhile, was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee that had gone cold, doing the kind of thinking he had been avoiding for years. He was a man who had built his entire life after Dara left on the premise that he did not need what he did not have. He had told Lily, in 100 small ways, to be his partner, to be steady, to be adaptable, to be okay. His 7-year-old daughter had spent 2 years saving $42 because she had taken that lesson and applied it to the thing she needed most. He had taught her to solve her own problems. He had not taught her that some things should not have to be solved by a child. Vivian came back on Sunday. She had not called ahead. She understood that calling ahead would give Marcus the opportunity to construct a reason for her not to come. And she had decided, somewhere between Saturday night and Sunday morning, that she was done allowing people, including herself, to construct reasons. She had spent 10 years being reasonable. She had a very clean apartment and an excellent professional reputation, and a wound that had never properly healed to show for it. She knocked on the door at 11 o'clock. Marcus opened it. He looked at her for a moment, then stepped back and let her in. Lily was at the kitchen table with a coloring book. She looked up, registered Vivian's presence with the quiet satisfaction of a child whose plan was proceeding correctly, and went back to coloring. "Can we talk?" Vivian asked. Marcus nodded toward the hallway. They stood in the narrow space between the kitchen and the bathroom, Lily's humming audible from the table. "I owe you an apology," Marcus said before Vivian could begin. She had not expected that.
Turn around.
"For what?" "For the way I said thank you on Saturday," he said. "I was grateful. I am. I just don't know how to receive something like that without it feeling like—" He stopped. "I've spent 7 years making sure we didn't need anyone, and she went and needed someone anyway, and the person she picked was you, and I didn't know how to hold that without feeling like I had failed at the one thing I was supposed to be doing." "You didn't fail her," Vivian said. "I know that," Marcus said. "I know that up here." He touched the side of his head. "But there's knowing, and there's knowing." "Yes," Vivian said, "there is." She told him then, not everything, not all at once, but enough. She told him about the pregnancy and the loss and the man who had not stayed. She told him about the home office that used to be something else. She told him that when Lily had looked at her in that hallway, she had felt, for the first time in a decade, like someone had seen past the part of her that was functioning correctly and found something real on the other side of it. Marcus listened without interrupting. He was good at listening. It was one of the things he did not get enough credit for. When she finished, he said, "I'm not looking for someone to fix us." "I know," Vivian said. "I'm not trying to fix you. I don't know exactly what I'm trying to do. I just know that I don't want to walk away from this, and I've been walking away from things for a long time, and I'm tired of it." Marcus looked at the kitchen, where Lily was still humming and coloring and pretending not to listen to every word. He exhaled slowly. "She's not a project," he said, "and neither am I." "No," Vivian agreed, "you're not. And I'm not interested in something that disappears when it gets complicated." "Neither am I," she said. "Not anymore." He let her stay for lunch. It was not a grand gesture. It was sandwiches and the last of the orange juice, and Lily talking at length about a dispute involving a board game and a classmate named Derek who had, by Lily's account, been cheating for the entire semester. Marcus listened and asked follow-up questions. Vivian listened and, at one point, offered a strategic suggestion regarding Derek that made Lily look at her with new and profound respect. After lunch, Vivian sat with Lily while she finished her coloring. Marcus washed the dishes. Nobody said anything important for a while, and the not saying anything felt, for the first time, like something other than distance. Before Vivian left, Lily retrieved the tin box from her room and placed it on the table. "You should keep this," Vivian said, pushing it gently back. "I know," Lily said, "but I don't want to hide it anymore." She carried it to the small shelf by the front door, the one that held Marcus's keys and a ceramic bowl for loose change and a photograph of Lily at age 4, laughing at something outside the frame, and set it there, in the open, where it could be seen. She stepped back and looked at it. Then she looked at Vivian. "You can come back," she said, "if you want." Vivian looked at the tin box on the shelf, at the apartment that was small and clean and full of evidence of a man who had given everything he had, at the child who had saved $42.63 because she believed, with the whole of her 7-year-old heart, that love was something you could work toward if you were patient enough and willing to wait. She thought about a room she had sealed 10 years ago. She thought about a door. "I want," she said. The box stayed on the shelf after that. Not hidden, not forgotten, just there, in the open, the way the things that matter most to us should be. There's something in Lily's story that most of us understand more than we'd like to admit. The idea that love has to be earned, that we need to save up enough goodness, enough success, enough of something before we're allowed to receive what we need. Lily put it in a tin box. Most of us carry ours differently, but the weight is the same. And maybe that's the real story here. Not just about a little girl and a CEO and a single father finding each other in an unlikely hallway, but about what happens when we stop hiding the box. When we're honest with ourselves, with the people around us, about what we've been quietly saving for. None of them were fixed by the end of that Sunday. Marcus still had hard days. Vivian still had to learn slowly and imperfectly how to stay in rooms that scared her. Lily still had questions without easy answers, but they had chosen, each of them, not to walk away. And sometimes that choice, quiet, ordinary, made over sandwiches and a coloring book, is the whole thing. If this story meant something to you, subscribe so you're here for the next one. And if it reminded you of someone, send it to them. Sometimes the right story at the right moment is its own kind of answer.